Press the bell icon on the YouTube app to never miss a video from Newslaundry.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for braving the Gurgaon traffic, about which I read an article this morning that there's half a highway under construction, so expect trouble for the next 3 months. So, Vivek, I'm not coming for the next 3 months, wherever you are. But I'm privileged and honored to have a conversation with Mr. Varma. And when Vivek asked me a couple of months, I think maybe 6 weeks ago, for whenever you had scheduled this, I had actually, this book was sent and I read up and I had prepared. These are the 3 things we're going to discuss, because this book is a collection of Mr. Varma's essays on various subjects, from reservation in the private sector to the Ram Mandir to Sardar Patel statue, and India's role on the international stage, and many, many issues that occupy news. And I had narrowed it down to freedom of speech, because you've written an essay on that, and a couple others, including reservation. But then, like Mr. Modi often does, he completely made the plans go all awry, because after what happened a few days ago, we can't not but discuss that. And out of all the subjects that you've written so much about, I didn't find an essay that specifically took on Article 370. So I think I highly recommend you pick up this book, especially if you want to see the evolution or the pattern of political commentary over the last several years. But what you will talk about 370, I guess, is not in here. I'd like to know what you think of the move, its appropriateness as not having a special provision for the state, and the manner in which it was done.
Thank you, Abhinandan. And let me say what a great pleasure it is to be on this forum. I am coming here for the first time, but I'd like to thank Vivek and his team and all of you for being here. The reason why Article 370 is not in my book, because Mr. Modi never asked me before he implemented it after the book was published. So, otherwise I have views on it. I have recently, in the last few days, spoken quite extensively on television on it. And probably my syndicated column tomorrow will be on this subject. So, why you should still ask me this question when it's not in the book here? Because it fits in with the spirit of this book.
Absolutely.
There are in this book, there is an argument, there is a point of view on a variety of subjects that are relevant, which are topical, which are pivotal, which are central to our lives and the unfolding of India's present and future. You don't have to agree with that point of view. And it's not my intention or desire to see that you agree. But what I find important is that in a democracy, we should have a point of view on a subject. To have that point of view and to be able to defend it cogently is, for me, Abhinandan, an important asset in itself and an advertisement of an argumentative democracy.
But wasted in the current environment.
Well, I don't believe to have a point of view can ever be wasted.
To articulate.
Perhaps it can be wasted for those who refuse to listen to it. But it cannot be wasted. Because when you form a point of view, it's a cerebral exercise. You have seen the situation, you're not following the herd, you're standing apart, you're contemplative, you are assessing the facts, analyzing the reasons, and you come to a point of view which you believe is congruent with what is the nature of the subject and what could be best for the country and for yourself. So that point of view is important, and therefore in the spirit of this book, which covers a wide range of subjects, on other issues, Article 370 is something you can ask me. I'm glad you've asked me about. And my view on Article 370 is that perhaps that decision will unleash for Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh now you don't talk of them in as one state, the kind of prosperity and happiness that the government believes it will. Let us assume that it will be the turning over of a new leaf, the beginning of a new chapter, the opening of a new avenue of possibilities. Let's accept that. My dissent is in the manner in which Article 370 was brought in. I believe that for such a historic step, it would have been far better if it had been done in conformity with the provisions of the Constitution and with at least an attempt to consult the people of Jammu Kashmir. Abhinandan, Article 3 of the Constitution is categorical. You cannot create a new state, divide a state, draw new boundaries of a state unless it is based on the specific recommendation of the Legislative Assembly of the state as reflecting the popular will of the people. Article 370 itself, which has been used to abrogate Article 370, Article 370, Section 3 says that the President can indeed modify or abrogate Article 370, but only with the express consultation of the Constituent Assembly of the Jammu Kashmir, which interprets to mean by inheritance the state legislature.
Right.
Now you haven't done that. But what you have done is to postpone elections, continue President's rule, assume the powers of the state assembly, not even made a semblance of consultation with even those stakeholders in the state who are otherwise not tarred with the same brush of terrorism, who have been part of the democratic process, and consulted with yourself in Parliament as the repository of the will of the people of the state through the state assembly, which is under suspension, whose powers you have assumed. And then by the brute majority which you enjoy in the Lok Sabha, and by
Managing
the strategic
Rajya Sabha.
management of the Rajya Sabha, you have brought into being a historic change, no doubt, and a fundamental change. You know, in the entire history of India, you've had a union territory being converted to a state, but never has a full state been converted to a union territory. And you've done that.
And also thus rendering the state assembly irrelevant. So even the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which had a constitution of its own, I think, a lot of people may not know because they may not have gone into the details of it. Constitutionally, the Parliament of India is not empowered to pass any even constitutional amendment that impacts the state of Jammu and Kashmir unless the state assembly, the constituent assembly, which, as Mr. Varma said, translates to the legislature, endorses that amendment. So constitutionally, it's not possible to do it without that step. But Mr. Varma, what I said earlier about wasted in the current climate, I didn't mean not having a thought through cerebral point of view, which you clearly do, and you articulated beautifully very often on television where it's wasted, is that what you just expressed, I am certain many political leaders in the country want to have that view, because the nuance that, yes, we agree that you cannot have one state that has such special provisions, but on the other hand, if you use methods that breach constitutional propriety, you have set a precedent for anyone in the future going the Pakistan way. Aaj ye mood kiya, chalo ye kar liya. It doesn't matter what the constitution says. That articulation is not possible in the current climate, because whether you see last night's speech of the Prime Minister, where he claimed that this will herald a new wave of prosperity for Kashmir, the human development indices of this, which are actually higher than Gujarat on pretty much every human development indice. So I don't know what he's going to do, because the only way it'll come down is lower, it basically is better on all indicators than about half the states of India, if not more. But and there was, if you fact check the Prime Minister's speech, it was full of facts that are completely off. Is there space for this kind of cerebral articulation in politics? And before we go deeper into your book, personally, you as a thinker, as a diplomat, as someone who is very well read and knowledgeable, do you feel sometimes in the political role that you play, is all this asset that you have or intellectual bandwidth wasted? What are you going to do with it?
I don't believe, and I say this genuinely not because I'm speaking from stage, I don't believe it's wasted. It is my strongest conviction that to hold even a minority point of view is important, even if the overwhelming reaction to it is negative. Perhaps there are less people to listen to what you are saying. Perhaps the space for genuine dialogue is shrinking. Perhaps the shrillness of those who oppose you is drowning out the voice of sanity. But I believe what you believe to be right is important as an end in itself. And it requires a courage of conviction to hold it. And so, once again, just to refer to it, as far as Article 370 is concerned, from day one I said that it would have been much better if it had been done with the fig leaf of constitutional propriety and democratically. I had said that, and if that were to fail, then you would have a reason to say that we adopted other means, but you never even made the attempt. And that was my point. But I still feel that there is space to hold a dissenting point of view, although I will concede to you your essential thesis that that space is shrinking.
I see. Ever since you joined politics and have become a general secretary of a prominent political party that is currently in a position of power in Bihar, have you had to tone down on what you would ordinarily articulate, and is it claustrophobic?
Well, you can see from these columns that I have written wherever possible what I believe to be true. I don't believe someone in politics can flagrantly or totally go against the party line, because then the right thing for you is to resign from that.
Correct, yeah.
The conscionable thing is then that you resign. But within the larger rubric of that party's worldview, I have taken great liberties, Abhinandan, and held views which were not entirely in conformity with the party, but which could be seen as acceptable dissent of a kind within the party. And I have done it because I believe, in my view, that it's good for the party itself to be able to show that within the party there is a spectrum, there is a bandwidth of opinion which can be articulated and can be projected. And that is important. Since 2000, January 13, after I resigned from the Foreign Service when I was ambassador in Bhutan, and became the spokesperson of the party, the national spokesperson, till today, I cannot recall a single incident, in spite of what I may have said on television or written in my columns, when Mr. Nitish Kumar called me to question me for what I said. Now, perhaps it would not happen in any other party. Perhaps there are leaders who are more brittle, with a lesser sense of tolerance, but it hasn't happened to me yet.
Or perhaps if you had to contest an election at the assembly, then something that you say can be played to an electorate. And since Mr. Nitish Kumar knows that is not what your role is in the party, He says, okay, an English-speaking audience is watching him. Even if he says something that we disagree with or is not our position, we'll let it pass. But if tomorrow you have to contest an election from Begusarai, then he'll say, dude, don't say that.
No, I think that I come as much on Hindi channels as on English, except that the people I meet at dinner in the evening have not watched me on the Hindi channels. My columns appear across India in Hindi, Marathi, Malayalam, and many other languages, including in Hindi, in translation, in one of the largest selling newspapers in Bihar and Jharkhand. So it's not as if what I say or what I write is not read by people beyond an English speaking audience. But even if I were to fight an election, I don't think people are necessarily inclined only to a certain uniformity. In other words, a unidimensionality. That he is a carbon copy of what the party has spelt out as A, B, C, D. People respect individualism if it's backed by facts and reason. That is why we are in politics.
Okay, as far as facts and reason are concerned, like I articulated earlier, I'm not sure that is a necessity in today's politics, because whether it's in India, as the speech last night demonstrated, or Donald Trump's tweet on which I have quoted at this very forum, this data set that he's put on how blacks die in violent crimes, which is completely nonsensical data. And he hasn't, after it's been proved wrong, he still hasn't deleted it because he knows it doesn't matter. So in such cases, I'm not sure facts play such an important role as rhetoric does. So briefly on that, and then I'd like to move on to the Ram Temple issue and Sardar Patel statue, because out of the many things you've written upon, I want to make it a little more lively, because I completely disagree on both those positions. On the rest, I kind of agree.
So the question was before...
That do facts really matter? Like you said, as long as there's facts and there's stated positions that are articulated clearly, the electorate doesn't mind. But do facts matter today?
You see, I'll tell you. There is an underbelly in India today to whom facts don't matter, only bigotry does. It's unfortunate. In other words, they are quick to arms at any position, however well reasoned or argued, which is against their blind faith or blind conviction that this is only the way it should be. This is particularly unfortunate for a country like India, where there has always been space for dialogue, where you have the capacity to listen to even those with whom you disagree. Right now here, apart from my book Chanakya's View, I have another book also on display, which is my last book, which is called Adi Shankaracharya, Hinduism's greatest thinker. And Adi Shankaracharya, who changed the evolution of Hinduism, had a debate, a very critical, acrimonious in the sense of the degree of difference, with another great scholar called Mandan Mishra. Mandan Mishra was a proponent of the Karm Kand school, which is action-oriented, and Adi Shankaracharya was the proponent of the Gyan Marg, the path of knowledge. And when the two met, and that dialogue, which lasted for days, was followed even in an age without social media by the entire Hindu world of that time. They disagreed, but they had a civil debate where each was prepared to listen to the other. And amazingly enough, the empire of this debate was none other than Mandan Mishra's wife. Such was the conviction that you will play a fair role in any decision.
And better ideas will prevail.
And better ideas will prevail. So, this country, I mean, take any text in India. The Upanishads are a dialogue. The Bhagavad Gita is a dialogue. If you read the Brahma Sutras in any commentary, including that written by Adi Shankaracharya, he will admit the viewpoint of what he calls the opponent. The opponent to that point of view in order to be able to take it on board and then see what counter arguments can be given.
So ironic, isn't it? Are you saying that the party that has written the Hindutva wave doesn't understand Hinduism at all, or is so illiterate in the religion that it is not aware of the legacy it carries?
I will amend, because I don't want to tarnish an entire party, but that there are elements within it who certainly don't understand the importance of reasoned debate. And I have been the target of many of them, even though many others stop short as part of that blind bigotry in saying, "Arey, aapne to Jagat Guru pe likha hai, sir. Iske aage kya kehna hai?" And I am using the book to tell them that it's a great disservice to the grandeur of the legacy of Hinduism to propound bigotry, to allow, and I must say, most of them are illiterate. If you ask them to write one page on what they believe are the 5, 10, 15 central tenets of Hinduism, in all probability you'll give them a 0 out of 10. But I suppose you have to take the good with the bad along as you go along.
Yes, that politics is the art of the possible. Now, before I move on to Sardar Patel statue and the Ram temple on which you have written in this book, and you know, I'm just going to cover 3 things because when you try to do everything, you do nothing. So we just like to get deep into these 2 issues. But before that, you've also written on freedom of speech, and you've given the specific example of the Omar Khalid episode, when these student leaders weren't allowed to speak and were locked up. Now, I have been an absolutist on freedom of speech for a very long time. But in the last year and a half or so, I am rethinking my position, and I will tell you why. As part of a program, I was in Germany, and there while they propound a liberal democracy and the ideals and values that go with a liberal democracy, there are certain things you cannot say there, like you cannot use the salute. There's certain symbols, emblems that have to do or relate to Hitler and the Second World War and the Nazi Party that are completely illegal. So while they believe in the freedom of speech, there is a limit to the freedom of speech. Similarly, in Rwanda, the Hutu and Tutsi horrific carnage that happened where almost 1 million people died between 2 communities, you cannot ask someone his tribe or whatever. It's not a caste, it was like a division that was created by Europeans. But whether you're a Hutu or a Tutsi, there is a limit to what you can say. And I think both those countries are beautifully run, and there is a sense of basic human decency that I find lacking in many of my interactions here, whether in places like this or whether I'm on the ground covering a political rally. So what I understand is only when there is a historic, ugly carnage like the Holocaust or what happened in Rwanda, then you can have a limit on freedom of speech, and people say, yes, it is legitimate because this led to this. But until that happens, anything goes. Are we teetering on an edge? Because after I saw the history of how the Rwandan genocide actually came, it was preceded by 3 years of lynchings, an endorsement by political commentators, an endorsement by the media, and then it reached the stage where the carnage happened. And after it happened, everyone said, okay, freedom of speech has its limits. Do we have to cross that path? Or having the position that you have, do we need to consider a minority report kind of situation that this could happen? So let's draw the line here.
No, freedom of speech is guaranteed in the Constitution. And the Constitution is the Gita of today. It is guaranteed as a fundamental right in the Constitution, subject to reasonable restrictions only in specifically stated conditions. Now, I have a midpoint on this as far as what are the limitations to freedom of speech. And I don't believe that we as a polity and a society need to be blindly imitative of any other nation without taking into account the context that prevails in our own country. For instance, you can stamp on the American flag in the United States and you will be protected by the freedom of speech. I believe that respect to the Indian flag cannot be compromised. But I don't believe that if the national anthem is something we respect, before any film starts in a cinema hall, we must compulsorily play the national anthem. It's a nuanced approach. I believe that singing Vande Mataram is a matter of pride for me. But I understand why, because of the nature of that iconic piece of poetry, the first paragraph, the first stanza of it is secular. It's a tribute to the motherland, while the remaining stanzas are about Hindu goddesses, which someone not belonging to the Hindu faith may have a problem in endorsing or singing. And therefore it is the national song, limited to the first stanza. I believe we have to nuance our position on freedom of speech in some respects without compromising the essential substantive kernel of it, which is that democracy must allow the widest level of dissent. And freedom of speech cannot become an instrument or a means of stifling that right to dissent. In other words, if I disagree with you and I am willing to be eloquent and vocal about it, I do not want you to tell me that I am transgressing laws which you have invented under the rubric of sedition, to tell me that I am being anti-national. Today there is a hidden reflex somewhere in the minds of some people that if you don't agree with me, and if I may add, if you don't agree with me fully, then you are not national enough. It's almost as if people are roaming around with a syringe in their hand to take a sample of your blood to see how much nationalism is there in it. And I am against that, because I don't believe that I need to prove it to someone. I don't believe that if I disagree with you, I am deficient in it. I believe that nationalism is a noble sentiment. I believe that I can fulfill that sentiment in my own way without an imposed uniformity in thinking, writing, speaking. And I think that is the spirit of India. Thousands of years ago in the Upanishads, it's just a last thought. Ekam satya vipraha bahuda vadanti. There is one truth, and wise people call it by different names. Ano bhradroha madraho kritavo yantu vishvata. Let good thoughts flow from all directions. Udara charitanam vasudhaiva kutumbakam. For the big-hearted, the entire world is your family. That is the spirit that has guided us. And therefore I will resist till my last might the imposition of uniformity, and therefore I must defend freedom of speech.
So let me approach this from the other side. While I completely agree and have had that position for a while, what I am talking about is not the anti-nationals, and you have in fact said in the piece on freedom of speech, unfortunately a new kind of Indian is being provided, all the encouragement to proliferate. This Indian believes that only what I say is right, and all those who disagree with me must be shut up or beaten up in the name of a new kind of insular anti-nationalism. But I'm approaching from the other side. These anti-nationals don't have the critical mass to create an environment where an entire community can be beaten up, or people who have been documented on video indulging in murdering a man are garlanded by a sitting minister. I'm approaching it from the point of view of what the Hutu-Tutsi conflict did, where those in the power, which was the majority, were able to convince the large population that it's okay to do this. Or just like the Nazi party was able to convince an entire population that if this is happening, it's okay not to speak up. And after such an injustice had been done, they said, you know what? We had to draw the line here. How far are we from there, or are we there at all? Do you see the kind of utterances that many people who hold a position that is responsible, the kind of things they say? Are we teetering on that edge that we are borderline, okay, if a couple of dozen murders is fine?
No, I believe we are on a slippery slope. And if you're objective, you'll admit that. If a sitting senior member of the ruling party says within the precincts of parliament that it is right to build a temple for Nathuram Godse, then we have to ask ourselves, am I in a majority or is he in a minority or vice versa? If a lady who is accused of terrorism wins a parliamentary seat by a majority of several lakh, when she has said publicly that Nathuram Godse was a patriot, we have to ask ourselves where this society and polity is going. If after a person is lynched on the suspicion of transporting beef and killed in the most merciless and ruthless manner, and the first FIR is lodged against the victim and not the perpetrators, we have to ponder, we have to pause, we have to ask. If the vulnerable are lined up and beaten and thrashed like the Dalits were in Una, we have to ask, what kind of society is this? If Muslims are caught by a crowd of illiterate bigots who say that you must chant Jai Shri Ram, thereby demeaning, devaluing Jai Ram himself, the Maryada Purushottam Ram, the epitome of rectitude, then we have to ask ourselves, who's interpreting Hinduism? So therefore there are many areas where I worry.
So in the context of freedom of speech, you think we may want to think about where the restrictions are, what one should be allowed to say, or you think that would be counterproductive?
I believe the Sedition Act needs serious review, or at least very, very Spartan invocation.
Okay.
I believe the greater danger is this trend that if you don't agree with me, you are not entitled to your freedom of speech. Abhinandan, there's an important point I'm trying to make. Freedom of speech is someone will accept. But that freedom of speech must now conform. In other words, that freedom of speech is valid only so long as you are in agreement with a majoritarian point of view. And it becomes in some manner suspiciously seditious the moment it differs or unyieldingly differs from your point of view. Then you are called an urban Naxal, Maoist. Then you are called anti-national, Desh Drohi.
So I'm just wondering, what are meetings like between your ally, the BJP, and your party when you're in the room? Like, describe to me, what does it look like? Let's say that you're sitting there, and is there a, I don't know, is a Giriraj Kishore, is there ever in the room, or is there ever a Yogi Ji, Mr. Bisht in the room? What's the dialogue? And if you say something like this, what do they say? I'm just, if I was a fly on the wall, what would I see?
Actually, we don't need to meet in a room, because on everything Giriraj Singh says, when he's being communal, we are public in our criticism. That's an article of faith, at least, I'm not talking individually of my party. There is no question of compromise on it. It's an article of faith. So, if there is rapidly communal talk, we are critical of it. In any case, I want you to understand one thing that Atal Bihari Vajpayee articulated, and that is a phrase he used called coalition dharma. And in coalition dharma, you can be allies politically, but with the right to have your own views on specific issues where you don't have to automatically endorse the views of the largest party in that coalition. So I'll give you one example, and this is a recent one. A bill came up against triple talaq. Now, why I worry is that sometimes there is no space left for the nuanced point of view. We believe triple talaq is an abhorrent practice. It needs to be abolished. We believe that the Supreme Court's judgment abolishing triple talaq needs to be supported and welcomed by all people. We believe Parliament has a right to bring in a law against triple talaq to enforce the Supreme Court's judgment. But we believe that the law that they bring in must be sustainable and must be good for Muslim women themselves and not only punish or criminalize the acts of Muslim men. So, in one of my columns, I analyzed the entire bill that was proposed article by article. And I therefore felt the bill needed greater scrutiny, further thought, deeper consideration, wider consultations, dialogue with stakeholders to make it a better bill. But once again, this is a sign of the times. People don't understand a nuanced point of view. To say that you don't like the bill meant that you are supporting triple talaq. The simplicity with which conclusions are inferred without and actually they decimate at one go the entire complexity and sophistication of our civilization and legacy. Why we don't have to always take black and white positions, but to argue in the space within. So I'm just giving that as an example.
Sure. And you've written an essay on the coalition dharma as well. Now, I want to ask, again, I'll persist on this before I move on to the Sardar Patel because of what you said, that one can coexist and a coalition dharma has to be maintained even while one may disagree on certain issues ideologically, but politically if there's an alignment of a minimum. What is the breaking point? What is the walkaway point if the kind of bigotry we see isn't? What is the walkaway point? For example, the JDU broke with RJD, Lalu's RJD. Over, in my view, far less from a basic point of view of the political rhetoric that we see than what the BJP has been able to push many of its allies to, tolerating. A lot less was required to be tolerated. I mean, I'm not saying, Mr. Lalu Yadav's sons are achievers who must be given political space or ministries. But one of them is a boy whose wife has accused him of being addicted to drugs and dresses up as Krishanji and a woman. And I mean, these are the kind of things that the boys have been accused of, which is, to my understanding, why the coalition broke. But what the BJP is doing is far worse than smoking some dope, dressing in women's clothes and dancing, and wanting political power. What's the breaking point?
I wish I was not in politics. Then I would have answered you more honestly. But as far as what is the breaking point, I'll give you a brief reply of 3 words. Watch this space.
Oh my God, all right. That is breaking news, which I should tweet out. But, okay, now let me get to the Sardar Patel statue. You have written 2 essays on the Sardar Patel statue. And in the first paragraph, you have, really gone into the whole bits of why people are opposing it. From the cost, reportedly 3,000 crores, to many people who genuinely are Gandhi sycophants and can't see beyond Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium, Jawaharlal Nehru University, IGI Airport, and Gandhi scheme and Rajiv Chowk. Now you have given the entire spectrum of arguments from the pretty smart ones to the really foolish ones in the first paragraph. But in the rest of your paragraphs, you have gone to decimate just the really shitty arguments. And you have left the top two untouched, which is a classic straw man kind of, debate. So I agree with all the, third, fourth, fifth. But on just cost, in the political and the economic environment that we are in now, we are in one very close to the auto hub of the country, and you know what's happening with Mahindra and with Maruti. You haven't touched upon why, when we don't have a history of being able to maintain something like that, when we don't have the economic resources for that kind of indulgence, should that money be spent? I really would like to know a man of your intellectual bandwidth to defend that position.
Well, my position is not a subject on which a great deal of complexity of thought needs to be invested. My simple point was, I believe Sardar Patel was a great leader. He was a great Gandhian. He was a revolutionary as far as peasant politics goes. He was an iron man. He had the sobriquet Bismarck of India. I believe he played a fundamentally important role in the manner in which India is constituted today. And I believe that given the political situation, in terms of visible veneration, he has not been given his due, because disproportionately, what are symbols of public acknowledgement of leadership or of contribution have been the monopoly of the Gandhi-Nehru Parivar. And if you quoted some examples, I can give you many more, right here in the capital city of Delhi. You want to catch a flight, go to Indira Gandhi International Airport. You want to go to study, go to Jawaharlal Nehru University. You want to go to the arts, go to the Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts. You want to go to do some shopping, go to the Rajiv Gandhi Chowk. You can't go to college, you want to do vocational training, there's the Indira Gandhi School of Vocational University. I mean, I can give you examples after examples. And I believe then that after a while, whatever the political reasons behind that decision and the appropriation by the RSS of Sardar Patel must count as one of the most agile moves by any political or cultural organization.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Sorry to cut in, but I just like to push back on that. And I am in no way a fan of the Gandhis, and I have cut my teeth in activism by opposing the UPA government. The Indira Gandhi University imparts education. The Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium is a space where a lot of children, including my nephew, go and play football and are taught how to be fit and strong. The Jawaharlal Nehru University is one of the finest universities imparting education. Rajiv Gandhi Chowk has fantastic restaurants and places where you can get kurta pajamas as beautiful as that stitched. What purpose does the Sardar Patel statue serve?
No, I
mean, they could have renamed Rajpath Sardar Patel Path.
It's like this.
It's 3,000 crores have not been spent with no economic benefit that derives from it. And I don't believe many people will buy the whole tourism argument.
I cannot completely deny the fact that nations live with certain forms of symbolisms which are not always justifiable in purely economic terms. I'll give you an example. I have been press secretary to 2 presidents of India as part of my earlier career in the foreign service. Why should an old couple live in 300 acres in the world's largest palace in the world?
I completely agree, yeah.
Okay. Why should Lutyens Delhi occupy property worth thousands upon thousands of crores? The chief election commissioner lives in a house which is 5 acres. I'm giving you one example, as do many ministers. It would be much better to parcel it out, sell it off. So where does one stop? I believe a statue is something any nation can afford. And if you've spent counting 3,000 crores for the first statue of this nature, which will also earn revenue as a tourist spot, for Sardar Patel, the maker in many ways of the India that we know, I don't think we don't have to be small-minded as far as this gesture or tribute is concerned. Because much more has been spent on other kinds of pilgrimages to other leaders.
But isn't whataboutery too base an argument of someone of your intellectual capacity?
No, I wrote this column in the context that there were many people who felt that to build a statue for Sardar Patel was a waste of money. And you are one of them, apparently, who feel 3,000 crores in a poor country is too much to spend.
I just phrase the sentence as I believe building a statue worth 3,000 crore is a waste of money, because inserting the name there gives a different spin to that sentence.
No, in my view, at one level, in an absolute sense, if 3,000 crores are distributed to the poor, probably they'll make a difference to the lives of people. But people don't live by bread alone, and especially nations. Why do you maintain certain buildings, certain spots like Rajghat? Do you know what is the annual cost of the maintenance of Rajghat? Gandhiji would probably like that money to be distributed to the poor, but nations maintain what they believe to be a symbol of both pride and of remembrance of someone whose contribution is indelible and beyond comparison to the making of modern India.
But since we have seen it achieves nothing, because a lady who says that the man who murdered that very person in whose memory we have created Rajghat, the assassin of whom is a patriot for whom a statue should be built, and she wins by almost 3 lakh votes, clearly Rajghat has not served its purpose. So what purpose will this statue serve?
No, it doesn't matter if a particular lady says what she does, but I think Rajghat is something any grateful nation should have built for the father of the nation. And I believe we can disagree on this point, but a statue for Sardar Patel, when so many other obsequious venerations for one particular family alone. And by the way, I'm not, just like you are not in favor of the Gandhi Nehrus, I'm not against, I'm a great admirer of Jawaharlal Nehru. In fact, every time on television there is the picture behind me of only 2 people, Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru. I'm a great admirer of Jawaharlal Nehru. But I think bureaucrats overdo it to please their political masters, and political masters go along with it so long as it is in their interest. As too much of India is remembered only by the Gandhi Nehru Parivar, and if an iconic statue is built for a man whose contribution was so unmatched, I for one would not cavil at the 3,000 crore rupees spent, because I do believe that the location of the statue, the amount you'll earn on tourism, will repay the costs over a period of time. And yet we will have a tribute to a great man. That's my view.
All right. I'd like to move on. Vivek, just let me know when there's like 10 minutes left, because we'd like to open it out for questions. Since you have Mr. Varma here, I don't want to hog up all the time, and because I could go on all night, because I'm fascinated by your points of view, and there's huge amounts to learn from the kind of reading and scholarship that you have done. Going from one statue to the next, which is not up yet, but is the inevitable second step to the first, which is the Ram Temple. You have written 2 essays in this on why shouldn't there be a Ram Temple, and you have argued in favor of there being a Ram Temple, and some very rational arguments. I won't expect you to quickly read the essay, but by and large, that in a country which is, has so many Hindus, while nowhere is Mr. Varma saying that it is a majoritarian kind of push that we have to buckle into. But where Ram is the symbol of the faith of so many people, it is not unnatural for a statue or a temple, of that man coming up in the place of his birth. Whether you believe it was history or mythology is irrelevant. Now, In a perfect world, I agree with that point of view, but we have to see that in the context of the politics of the country. In a place where even a slight step there, the slogan you hear is, Ye to pehli jhanki hai, Mathura Kashi baki hai. After that, you have sitting parliamentarians and MLAs saying that even, the mosque here uh, was a temple, Qutub Minar, Taj Mahal. It just goes on, then you don't stop. And now, I believe it is pretty much a done deal. Mr. Bish, the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, has said that he will build a statue even larger than Sardar's statue in Ayodhya. In this context, convince us.
Well, my view is that faiths are a living legacy. Hinduism, at the level of spirituality and philosophy and metaphysics, is one of the most remarkable bodies of thought. Imagine having 6 systems of Hindu philosophy, of which 5 can technically be called atheist, because they are not talking about God, but only about what the ultimate truth can be. They don't mention God. This is the remarkable legacy of Hinduism as a body of thought. At a practical level where it's a faith, religions have their symbols. Muslims have mosques, Catholics and Christians have churches, and those in Hinduism will have temples. Now, my own view is that Ram is one of the most idolized deities in Hinduism. He's Maryada Purushottam. If Krishna is Leela Purushottam, Ram is Maryada Purushottam. As I said earlier, the epitome of rectitude. A man beloved by the masses, and anyone who has read Tulsidasa's Ramcharitmanas. In villages after villages, at least in northern India and south, we have Valmiki's Ramayana and Kamban's Ramayana. There is a veneration for a deity who, according to Tulsidas, is above Nirgun and Sagun. The Advait notion of an attributeless deity. Neti, neti, not this, not this. Because anything will circumscribe the omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, absolute nature of that Brahm. And on the other hand, Sagun, where that particular God then represents this larger all-pervasive consciousness as an attribute of every auspicious quality. And that is Ram, in the popular notion of imagination. I mean, here is a man who's being banished to the forest by a conspiracy. And he goes to meet his mother Kaikeyi. And I'm saying this not because of any other reason. That's the reason for his veneration. And that's why I believe those who are weaponizing Jai Shri Ram are doing a great disservice to Ram, who is known, is revered for his nobility, for doing the correct thing even in the most adverse circumstances. And Kaikeyi says to him that this is what I want as the 2 boons which you know, 14 years, Bharat 12. And Ram says, and she's looking at Ram, what is his reaction? And Ram says, Sun janani, soi sut bad bhagi, jo pitu mat bachan anuragi. Listen, mother, that son is blessed who has the opportunity to fulfill the command of his parents. Now this is Maryada Purushottam Ram, right or wrong, I'm not saying. That's why he's in the popular imagination of the people. Now Ayodhya is believed to be his birthplace. What could be wrong in building a temple for Ram in Ayodhya? Provided, and I write that in my column, Abhinandan, you will concede, provided it is done in the manner that Ram himself will approve, which is in accordance with what is correct. And I say there are 2 paths to that. One is either by mutual agreement between contending stakeholders or by a decision of the Supreme Court.
Which way do you think that's going to go now that they're hearing it, what, 5 days a week as opposed to 3? What, they've come up with some statement.
Again, I have an issue with that. The Supreme Court can hear it twice a day if they like. But beyond a point, an article of faith cannot be subjected to a judicial review.
So then you're saying it should just be by the dialogue of the
It
two
should
parties.
be a dialogue between two people. So my argument again is nuanced. If somebody were to say that because there is a dispute, there should be no temple for Ram in Ayodhya, which is universally recognized to be his birthplace,
No, sure,
then
that-
I would disagree. I would say build a temple. But in the same column I write that I would urge upon Muslims to say that, okay, if you, for millions of Hindus, this is actually a spot which you venerate, whereas our mosque came about recently, take this land and give us land where who built for us as a grand mosque. And I castigate liberal Muslim opinion for agreeing with me privately but not having the courage to articulate it publicly.
No, I completely agree with that position. My only fear is that, I mean, and perhaps you're right, had that position been taken by the All India Muslim Law Board, it would have demonstrated a badappan, a largesse. But today, if they were to do that, it would lead to give us Taj next, give us this next, give us that next.
Again,
so we've reached a stage where that ship has sailed.
Yeah, first of all, if you were to build or agitate for a temple for Ram at the disputed site, that should not become the sluice gate to open what have obviously been mosques built over temple sites. If you be to go to Kashi Vishwanath, where Kashi Vishwanath was moved to accommodate the mosque that was built by Aurangzeb. That is a historical fact.
But that's not unique to interreligion.
But I would not like to revisit history to open up contemporary acrimonies. So there has to be a full stop to this, because where do we stop otherwise?
Exactly.
I concede that. But my essential point was that let us not take an extreme position that we are against even a temple to be built for Ram in Ayodhya. Every year in Delhi you have the Ram Leela. It costs again lakhs of rupees because the government also helps to organize it. Well, one argument could be you could use that money to distribute dal and bread to the poor who can't have 2 meals a day. But then there are things that happen in the practiced faiths where you do require certain symbolisms of devotion, of prayer, of assurance, and a temple is essentially a repository of all three of these.
All right, thank you. I will open it up to the audience. Oh my God, we have a lot of questions. So let me start with this gentleman here and then I'll come to you. So yeah, Vivek, can you please do the honors? And could I just request you to, okay, sorry sir, Vivek had the mic in his hand. And could I just request you to keep...
Can I sit and speak? Can I sit and speak? I'm sorry.
Please, yeah,
okay.
keep sitting. I just request you to keep your questions short so we can get as many of them as possible.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
I more or less completely endorse everything that Mr. Pavan Varma has said. I've been a regular reader of his articles in the Times of India. I'll just want to go back to this question about Sardar Patel's statue. I have great regard for him. I don't share your enthusiasm for Nehru, not to the same extent, not that I don't believe that he completely messed up things. Now, this 3,000 crores which is supposed to be spent or is likely to be spent on his statue, don't you think it could have been spent for, let us say, starting 300 schools, especially for the disadvantaged children, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, backward classes, and a few other backward. That's not the only way to honor a person of his great eminence. Don't you think that could have been a better alternative?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I would have been fully, should I answer this quickly and then
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
move on because I then will forget. I would fully support what you have said if there were 3,000 schools. Instead, in the name of Sardar Patel, it would also be a very befitting way of paying tribute. It's a choice we need to make. if you cross Ring Road in Delhi after the ITO and parallel to Bahadur Shah Zafar Marg, on that ring road, there are hundreds of acres
Acres.
of the most valuable land. And we have only Smriti Sthals for each Prime Minister who has passed away. That land can be built to make a school. And but a nation makes choices. Whether it is Shakti Sthal or
A convention has been established, and the convention clearly is we don't prioritize schools
But I don't disagree
over real
with you.
estate. Sorry, sir, may I just move on? There are actually two more gentlemen. I'm so sorry. We'll just give you one each. I'm sorry, sir, but I don't want to disappoint the other three people in the room.
So very high caliber of conversation. Thanks. Socrates and other scholars said that democracy, if you choose, then the sweet seller will win, whereas the surgeon who is advising you correctly and will take you away from diabetes and other diseases will lose. When you say we are on a slippery slope, you are saying that the sweet seller is winning and we are giving up. So I come back to Abhinandan's question, how can facts overpower rhetoric? First point. And the second question is that I'm sorry, I'm forgotten the second question.
That's
but this
okay.
is the first
We'll come back to you. Just go with that one. We have someone in the back. Yeah. Please go ahead, sir.
the only way you can overcome rhetoric through facts is through persistence and hope for a better milieu where rationality prevails over blind emotion. It's not an easy task. Every day, there's a particular channel, if you go on to it, I'm not going to name it, the anchor comes with an already pre-decided point of view and uses every form of adjective short of an open expletive to say, to tell you that you are wrong completely without listening to you. And millions watch it. So it's not an easy job.
We have to
Persistence
stay at
pays.
it. We have to
You have to
stay
stay
at
at
it. Yeah. So I'll just come to you, sir. There was a gentleman there. And after
Pavanji,
that, we'll
thanks
just
so much
get the mic this side.
for always being pushing for facts. One question, just not just about India, but what in your mind is causing this rise of majoritarianism, right wing across, whether it's the US, Brazil, India, of course, and multiple other countries? It seems to be happening at a scale that we have never seen before. What's in your view causing that?
I think that it's the failure and smugness of liberalism. For too long we assumed that liberal opinion carried even to an extreme was unchallenged because it was per se inherently and intrinsically right. There were forces gathering in opposition to it all these years, waiting for the right time in a way to strike. And across much of Europe, in America and in India or in Russia, you see that is happening. Secondly, I think there is a reaction to rootless cosmopolitanism. I mean, one of the reasons, for instance, in the United Kingdom, the Brexit movement has gained prominence is because the liberal argument watered down nationalism to a point where it almost ceased to exist. And yet people who couldn't speak your language being allowed into your country, living there as owners of the city, as part of a larger cosmopolitan reality of a larger Europe, which went against somewhere the nationalist grain. So I'm saying there are many causes to it. It's a subject by itself and we can have a session on it. But there is a reason why there is a slight swing towards the right. Now, I think what it requires, and I'll end here, is for liberalism to re-examine itself. Get more rooted to the soil. Stop this highfalutin ideological rationalizations without being rooted in the ground. I mean, you can't speak for secularism if you have read the Ramayana only as a comic book. Gandhiji spoke of why we need to be secular because he had steeped himself in all the religions, including Hinduism. So there was a floating, unrooted, culturally adrift, rootless, liberal, largely an elite with an elite leadership, which needed a reaction and has got it. And typically, thesis, synthesis, antithesis, the pendulum will swing again, but the liberalism has to re-examine itself.
And I'd recommend an article in the Time magazine, I think it's 2 weeks ago, which gives a pretty comprehensive view of this, where technology plays an important part. You should check it out. It's in the Time magazine. I think it's called How Insurgent Ideologies Are Spreading and What Are the Tools That Are Making Them Spread. It's based on a report done by, I think, Georgetown University, but it's an interesting article. Georgetown University, I think, has done a research paper on it, and Time magazine has written an article based on that research paper.
So firstly, thank you so much for, I think, what is a very enlightening discussion. I just want to get your thoughts on whether you believe the people of Kashmir truly want to be a part of India, and if they didn't, whether it would actually be fair to force them to be a part of India the way I guess they're being forced right now.
Good question, yeah. If they don't want to at all, what do you do?
I don't think, and this is my personal conviction, that even if a plebiscite was to be held in an impartial manner, the people of Kashmir would necessarily say they want to join Pakistan. I don't believe that.
But Azadi, if that's on the ballot as well, although it isn't, just so everyone's clear,
and I'm equally clear about this, that sovereign nations don't allow referendums on what is their territory as defined under law. If you were suddenly to have a referendum in one of the states, other states in India, and I can name one of them at least where such sentiments have surfaced in the past, a referendum and people will say, okay, we'll have independence here, enough of New Delhi and Hindi-speaking zealots. So no sovereign state allows its territory as defined to be negotiated through referendums. What I need, and I said this on television yesterday or day before, I forget, I said passing the bill on 370 was the easiest part of the exercise. The real challenge begins now.
Yeah.
Because you are not dealing with some artificial, mechanical, inanimate construct outside the fabric of India. You are dealing with people who are citizens of your own country. And you cannot keep people in that level of magnitude under siege forever. So you will have to have a system by which they become part of the national mainstream again, or at least an attempt which is sustainable will have to be made.
One last question, and then we're going to ask Mr. Varma to come to the library. There's some books of his that are available for sale. If you guys want to have a chat with him, you can delve further. But I think one last question here.
Yeah, so before that question, sorry, please go ahead, because I don't want mine to be left behind. And I wanted to ask this question. By the, Mr. Varma, other than having written books on the greatest thinkers of Hinduism, on current affairs and his scholarly work, he has also translated Gulzar and done a spectacular job, and it's not easy making that man happy and satisfied with his. So I have never had the courage to ask him, although I've had many conversations with him, what does this line mean? इस मोड़ से जाते हैं, कुछ सुस्त कदम रसते, कुछ तेज कदम राहें, पत्थर की हवेली को शीशे के घरों से तिनकों के नशे मन तक इस मोड़ से जाते हैं. I sing it with gay abandon. I have no idea what it means.
I will happily explain to you its meaning, but if you don't mind, when we are taking a sip of a drink after the session.
Done. Okay. On that note, thank you so much, Mr. Varma. Thank you, Vivek. Thank you. You've been a wonderful audience. I hope you can check out the book, and Mr. Varma's here to sign any copies that you'd like.